Welcome back, everyone, to Searching for Faith. If you're new here, I'm Tracy, and today we have a super fun video that I've been preparing for a while. So I have all my notes ready, but we are going to be going through my favorite or my recommendations, I guess, for Christian movies. But just heads up, if you're expecting a list with Left Behind and God's Not Dead, you're going to be very surprised. So let's get started. Okay, y'all, so I have on this list several movies. I have my top 8 movies, but then I have some other sub areas that we're going to go through first before we get into my top 8, okay? So my criteria for what makes a good Christian movie is that, one, it has to be well-funded or be good quality in some way. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to have a high budget, but I don't want a movie that looks like somebody made it at home with their handy cam, I want a good quality, well-written, quality movie. The other one is to not be overly cheesy, although I do have a subcategory for cheesy movies that I like, but not overly cheesy. The third criteria is that it is not an in-your-face evangelism, so not the whole point of the movie is to evangelize you, save you. I like Christian movies that essentially anybody could watch. Somebody could watch it and maybe not even realize it's a Christian movie at first, or that it could be a movie that anybody, whether they're Christian or not, or even in the mood for a Christian movie, could enjoy. So more subtly Christian movies. And then the last one is that it's not propaganda or doesn't appear to be propaganda. Obviously there are things that would be Christian in nature, that we know are truth, that may appear, if they are presented in the wrong way, as propaganda to people who aren't Christians. And then there are just straight up some movies that are made by more extremist groups of the Christian religion that legitimately are just straight up propaganda. So those are my 4 criteria: good quality, not overly cheesy, not in your face evangelism, accessible for anybody. Anybody could enjoy watching it, and not propaganda. Hey y'all, so editing Tracy popping in here for a second. So my criteria, hopefully I didn't confuse or even hopefully not offend anybody with my criteria. But I was recently watching a interview video with Carlos and Alexa Penavega. Does anybody else find it the cutest thing ever that they merged their names? He was Carlos Pena and she was Alexa Vega, and when they got married they became the Penavegas. I don't know, I just think that's cute. But I saw an interview recently because I think they have a new movie coming out. I think it's called Mr. Manhattan. I think it was on CBN News maybe, which for those of you who aren't aware, I think that's the Christian Broadcasting Network. But I saw an interview with them recently, and at the very, very beginning of the interview, Carlos kind of says the same thing that I'm saying here, and I thought that he said it so eloquently, maybe even better than I could say it. So I wanted to link that interview below so you can go check that out, because like I said, he just explains it better. I think the way he put it was that to be able to reach a broader audience, we need to cast a bigger net. So we need to be able to make worldly content. And then his wife says, but from a kingdom heart. So I really liked that wording, that you're making worldly content from a kingdom heart to be able to reach more people. And that's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about my criteria to be a good Christian movie, that it is approachable and accessible to so many people that anybody could watch it and enjoy it and still get that kingdom message out of it. if that makes any sense whatsoever. But go check out their video, because I feel like he kind of is expressing the same thought process that I'm trying to express in this video. But just, it'll be linked below. So let's get back to the rest of the video. I have some subcategories where I talk about where the few categories that I have that are subcategories before I get into my top 8 favorite ones. Is the book was better, a couple of controversial choices, movies that you would expect me to say but are still worth a watch, the best cartoon movie that's Christian, and then cheesy but still good. All right, so first let's start with the book was better. The first one you may not think of normally as a Christian movie, but is A Walk to Remember, which is based on a book by Nicholas Sparks. I really loved both the book and the movie. I highly recommend, like, if you've never read Nicholas Sparks before, I feel like A Walk to Remember is like a good like intro. Like, I read it like as a teenager, so it's like a good book to read. It's like shorter. It just feels like more accessible to me. But in the movie and the book, I'm gonna try not to give any spoilers too much. We'll just do a spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, skip to the next one. But you do find out that the girl is sick, okay? And in the book and the movie, she's a Christian, like a very devout Christian. The boy that falls in love with her, she tells him at one point she's not allowed to date, like he has to get permission from her father. And essentially in the book version, he gets saved and his job ends up being that he becomes a pastor. Like, when you get to the end of the book, and it's Nicholas Sparks, so this is not a spoiler alert, but when you get to the end of the book and she has passed away and it goes to the future, he's a pastor. So he gets saved in the book and becomes a pastor, right? In the movie, they take all of that out. I mean, she's still a devout Christian, but they kind of minimize the Christian part of it in the movie. And there's not really any talk about him like accepting her religion or learning to trust God in any way. And the profession that he has in the future, when you skip ahead a few years, is that he's becoming a doctor. So the movie is less Christian than the book. So definitely from a Christian standpoint, the book was definitely better than the movie. The other one is Chronicles of Narnia. Now, weirdly, I actually prefer the 80s versions of the Chronicles of Narnia, but the problem with the 80s versions of the Chronicles of Narnia, like the BBC versions, is that you only have Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and Silverchair. So those are the only 4 that you have. So you don't get The Horse and His Boy, you don't get Magician's Nephew, and you don't get The Last Battle. So you don't have all of the movies. And then, of course, the new movies, you only have Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So you only have 3. So we still are without movies for Horse and His Boy, Magician's Nephew, and Last Battle. And we didn't get a new version of the Silverchair. So definitely the books are better than the movies, especially the new movies. The new movies, the only one that I feel like was very well done, very accurate, was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian. They made so many changes, and not just to the story. Like, as someone who loves books and loves to read, you expect there to be changes in an adaptation of a book, and I try to be understanding of that. But when they change like the essence of who a character is, that's when it upsets me. And that's what they did in Prince Caspian. Like, they totally changed how Peter acts in the books into the movie, and that really bothered me. They created this whole like love story with Caspian and Susan, which obviously didn't happen in the book. So just, they changed a lot about the characters, and that kind of bothered me. And then they just kind of had to speed through Voyage of the Dawn Treader. So if you're into the books and you want to see movie versions, I recommend the old versions from the 80s. But the book is definitely better than the movie. Also, the Shunning series. So I'm not a huge Amish Christian romance person, but I loved the Shunning series books by Beverly Lewis. And they made all of them into movies. I'm trying to remember if it was Hallmark. I think Hallmark made them. I felt like the first movie was pretty good, but then they changed the actress to that girl that was in Switched at Birth in the second and third versions, and then they changed who played Daniel in every single movie, and it just got really convoluted and confusing and hard to follow because the characters were changing. I still watched them. I still enjoyed them as a lighthearted, just fun, movie to watch. But the books were way better. And then this might be a controversial one to say the book was better, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's obvious, but Redeeming Love. Redeeming Love, we have been waiting for years for a movie version of Redeeming Love. And I actually thought they did a decent job. I just didn't love it as much as I wanted to. I just didn't feel it as much. And there's just so much in the book that for them to keep their rating, they couldn't show in the movie, obviously. But if you haven't read Redeeming Love, go read Redeeming Love. And read it before you watch the movie. It's one of those that I highly recommend. Do not see the movie before you read the book, because I don't want it to ruin it for you. I want you to have all the ohs and ohs and shocks and all the things that you are supposed to get out of it. And it's just such a beautiful, it's one of the best-selling books. It is so good. Even non-Christians love Redeeming Love. It is an amazing novel. Highly recommend. The movie was still good, but the book is better. I do have a couple of controversial picks. The first one is another that you don't think of as a Christian movie, but Signs. It's M. Night Shyamalan. It's mild horror, more suspense is what I'd call it, because I don't do horror. So I feel like it's more mild horror, but more suspenseful. It's essentially about aliens, but there's this interwoven faith story within it, because you already know this at the beginning of the story, so this really is no spoiler alert, but just in case, spoiler alert, his wife is dead at the beginning of the book, at the beginning of the movie, and he has lost, there's this pastor, who was married, and his wife died tragically. And so the pastor has essentially lost his faith. And I'm not going to give too many spoilers, because it would totally ruin the movie for you, because the whole point of M. Night Shyamalan is that he is, you have lots of jump scares and unexpected things. This was to surprise you. So I don't want to ruin any M. Night Shyamalan movie for anybody. But there is this interwoven throughout the story signs of faith and signs of there being a God. And I know you would not expect it in an alien movie, a movie about an alien invasion, but it's not really about the aliens. It's about faith. It's about faith in God. And that's really what Signs is about. So it's just one of those things where I just have to tell you to watch it. Just watch it. And then let me know. If you've seen Signs and you agree with me about the, religious faith element in it, and how just mind-blowing and big it is, let me know in the comment section. So my predictable choices that you're probably expecting me to say, but are still worth a watch, is of course The Passion of the Christ. It's a movie that every Christian should watch once. It was very, very well made. It really drives home the reality of what Jesus went through for us. And it is heartbreaking, and it is messy, and it is raw and real, and it digs deep, and it gets you at your core. But definitely being like mentally prepared emotionally to watch it. And I've only ever seen it once. Like, I saw it once in the theater, and that was it. I've never seen it again, but it stayed with me. So definitely it's just one of those movies I feel like every Christian should watch at least once. And then the other one is Lord of the Rings. If you're not aware, Tolkien was actually a Christian himself. He's one of the friends that actually brought C.S. Lewis to Christ. And it's not in your face Christian the way C.S. Lewis is. Like, C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, interwoven throughout the movies, it is very, very, very Christian. He's like blatantly Christian, like over the top symbolic with his Christian message. And from what I've read and heard, Tolkien didn't love it, how like obvious he was with his Christian symbolism. So Tolkien didn't mean for Lord of the Rings to have Christian symbolism, but it's in it. It's filtered throughout the whole book series, and the movies were made so well. So highly recommend you read. I wasn't able to read The Lord of the Rings. I had to listen to them, but I highly recommend the movies, and if you're able to read the books, definitely recommend. So this may not be a surprise, but the best cartoon Christian movie, as far as movies go, is definitely Prince of Egypt. So well done. It's a wonderfully beautiful, traditional animated movie from the 90s, and the music is so good. So good that they've made it into a Broadway musical. So highly recommend. Side note, best cartoon TV show of all time, VeggieTales. My husband hates VeggieTales. I think his younger brother watched it too much. I didn't start watching VeggieTales till college. So it's kind of like this, it's like how you watch cheesy things in college and they just become nostalgia. That's what it was for me. First season of VeggieTales. I'll fight anybody who disagrees with me. All right, so there's a couple of movies that are very, very cheesy. They know, especially the first one. I feel like the first one, it is almost tongue-in-cheek making fun of itself. It's so cheesy. But very, very good. So it's kind of I guess it's is it okay to say guilty pleasure when it's something that's Christian? But it's one of those movies that you're do I admit to people that I watched this and liked it? Okay, so the first one is Christian Mingle. Hear me out. That movie was so good. It was hilarious. It's basically the premise, without going into too much detail for you, is a girl who is unlucky in love, has dated lots of guys, it's having a hard time finding a good guy. And so in a moment of desperation, she signs up for the Christian Mingle dating site, okay? And pretends to be a Christian on the site. Her first date ever with the guy is just the most hilarious scene in the world when she prays over a muffin. It is just hilarious. She literally is Googling how to be a Christian, words and phrases Christians use, but she has to she likes the guy, and she has to keep the farce going, and it is just hilarious. It is so funny, but so real. A very honest take on single girls in the 2000s and on, and how hard it is to date, and a good reflection on online dating and all the things. So it is so funny and surprisingly very, very good. So I highly recommend watching Christian Mingle. I know you're probably just the sheer title of it makes you think it's gonna not be good, but it is so good. It is hilarious. The other one that was surprisingly good but cheesy is a movie called A Home Sweet Home. And it actually has Candace Cameron Bure's daughter in it, whose name I am blanking on right now. I haven't seen her daughter act in anything else. That's essentially kind of the same premise, where this girl because she likes this boy, decides to pretend to be a Christian and do Habitat for Humanity. It kind of deceives the people that she's working with and the guy that she likes. But she has some moments throughout, like some big things that kind of prove to her that God is real. And then she kind of has to, make amends for the lies that she told. But both of those have very similar premises, where like a girl to like get a guy, pretends to be a Christian, and then is, hilarity ensues, like the hijinks ensue, and it's just very, very funny to me. But both were movies that I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I did, but I did. I loved both of those movies. All right. Okay, so now we are going to get into my top 8 favorite Christian movies of all time. And I actually did a lot of research and watched a lot of movies. And because there were a handful that I hadn't seen yet, like new movies. Like I watched Jesus Revolution. The ones that were in my watch list were so Jesus Revolution, I Can Only Imagine, was the one about the guy whose wife is sick. I'm blanking on what the other one was. But there's like a list of movies that I watched that I hadn't seen yet, that I watched like in preparation. And yes, I have seen the Left Behinds. I watched them when I was young. I read the books. We all watched them. Back when Left Behind came out, it was like one of the first like true like Christian films that had come out, like at least in my lifetime. There wasn't a lot of good quality, high budget films at that time. And yes, I've watched the God's Not Dead. I haven't watched all of them. They have made like so many God's Not Dead. It's like the Christian version of Land Before Time. Like they've made so many of those movies. But I did watch the first two, like the one where the boy is proving God exists and is basically going through apologetics. And then the one where the teacher is on trial. I did watch those two. They were a fun watch, but they are definitely not on my list, and they are definitely kind of crossing that whole too in your face Christian. And they're not gonna, just the sheer name God's Not Dead, any non-Christian is not going to just pick that up and watch it for fun. It's essentially preventing someone from watching it with the title alone. But we're gonna get now into my top 8. And no, Jesus Revolution and I Can Only Imagine did not make the list. So we do have some older ones and some surprising new ones that I was not expecting to be on my list, but it made it by accident. All right, so number 8 for me, big shocker. Okay, it's gonna be When Love Comes Softly, y'all. This is also another Hallmark movie. Definitely probably could also fall under the book is better category. And I do recommend, but like there are so many When Love Comes Softly books, and I read these when I was a teenager. Me, my mom, and my sister all read them. But the first Love Comes Softly movie especially is just so good and so well done. It has Katherine Heigl in it and playing Marty. And just the very beginning of the story, this isn't a spoiler, the very beginning of the story, this girl is going west. She's pregnant with her husband. Her husband gets killed. And so because of the time period that it is, she can't go home yet because it's literally going into winter and she needs a home, but she can't just stay in anybody's home. So she marries this farmer who has a daughter who needs somebody to help him look after his daughter because he's also a widow. And so she marries him, stays with him, and he says, if you want to go home in the spring, I'll help you get home. So obviously, as expected, there is a love story element, but it is very well done, especially the first movie. The first movie is so well done, and just the heartbreak, and that not understanding how somebody could believe in God even though bad things happen, that kind of like storyline is really at the heart of the movie and the book. So that grieving, that coming to terms with that pain, that hurt, and learning to love, but also to accept love, all of that, very big themes. And still to this day, one of my favorite Christian movies ever, or with, I'm calling these Christian movies, but they're movies with like faith elements with a Christian point or undertone, whatever you want to call it. So my seventh favorite, we are going in order from least favorite to most favorite. All of these are my favorites, but we are going in order. We're getting to the ones that I love more and more the closer we get to one. So number 7 is another surprising one that could be borderline considered too in your face, but is Grace Unplugged. So it's this movie where this girl is like a worship leader with her dad, and she decides that she's not able to like express herself, so she decides to like go off and become like a singer, but she's kind of sucked into like the secular world. So I feel like this is kind of breaking my rule a little bit. I was back and forth about whether to put on my list, but I've watched this movie so many times. I just love it so much, and it really does have a really good message, and I feel like it was very well done. One of the Michalka sister, I don't even know if I'm saying their last name. It's Allie and AJ Michalka, and I think it's Allie. I think Allison is the one that's in this movie. It was very well done, had a very good budget. The songs and the music are really good. But like I said, it can be borderline, like a little bit too in your face evangelism. But I just thought it was like a very beautiful story, and it definitely eases you in, I guess, even though like the very first scene is her like leading worship at a church with her dad, but it feels real, it feels authentic and raw, and like I said, well done, well made, good story. So a brand new movie that actually made it on my list, coming in at number 6, is our new movie Unsung Hero, which is the story of the Smallbones, which is, if you did not know, the family of Rebecca St. James and the band For King and Country. I didn't know until I started seeing all of the trailers and things of the movie that the guys from For King and Country were even related to Rebecca St. James, because I don't even think I knew her last name, but I loved Rebecca St. James as a teenager. She is one of my favorite Christian artists of all time. Like, I sang her songs all the time as a kid. Like, she really, like, I identified with her, and we're close in age, and I just, like, I connected with her and her music as a teenager in the 90s. So this movie is about their family. The 4 King and Country boys are like little kids in the movie, but it's about their family and coming over from Australia and their financial hardships, and it is a beautiful story. It's also, you have some fear, some heartache, a lot of trusting in God, anger, questioning why God's letting things happen, family, which my family is very close, even though we've been through a lot. And I do feel like it probably spoke to me personally, because I feel like I could identify with them and their family and what they went through. So I just thought it was a beautiful story, very well done, very well made. So it definitely made my list at number 6. All right, so number 5, we're definitely gonna put a trigger warning here. If I'm going to put what they are right here, because I think that YouTube will like demonetize me, even though I'm not making money on YouTube yet, but YouTube will like flag my video if I say these words out loud. But people use like weird terms like unlifing yourself. That's the words they use, but I'm going to put the words right here. So if this either of these things that I put at the bottom of the screen are triggers for you, please skip to the next one. But How to Save a Life is a really good movie where a boy and his best friend are best friends until they get to high school, and one boy like essentially pulls away and starts hanging out with the popular crowd, and his friend just spirals deeper into depression and feeling rejected and not feeling accepted and bullied and all the things, to the point where he does something bad at school and unlifes himself. And then the friend that rejected him, younger, goes through this period of grief and regret and blaming himself. What's the word when somebody goes through something traumatic, but you have guilt? Oh, survivor guilt, all of those things. And then he starts going to church, but even church seems wrong to him. Like, they're not, it's like surface level. And so he starts even changing the church kids, because he gets to a point in his life where he's like, I don't care anymore. I want authenticity. I just want realness. I want to see people being real. And so he goes on this journey to change not only himself, but he starts changing people around him. And it is a very real, very raw, very sad, traumatic movie, but beautifully written, very well done. It's kind of old now. It came out, I think, like in the mid-2000s, but very, very well done, very powerful message, really hits home, and is very relevant to things that we are going through now. So highly recommend, very well done. All right, so number 4 is a relatively new movie that I have discovered. I think I watched it first a couple of years ago, or was it a year ago? I'm not sure when it came out, but it's on Netflix, so definitely check it out. But it's called A Week Away. I was worried that this one also might be breaking my rule of being too in your face evangelism, but I felt like they kind of ease you into it too, and I felt like it was very real, especially if you, like me, spent every summer going to Christian camp, a week-long Christian camp. It just felt like something I could identify with as well, but it also deals with abandonment, anger, like acting out, feeling unloved, grief, like just like the things that real teenagers are probably going through. It really addresses those. Although some people could watch it and be like, they brainwashed that kid at youth camp. I feel like it really did do a good job of showing that as he's changing, it's his own choice. And he also changes other people around him and helps other people as well. But it's definitely a very Christian movie. Like, it's not like it's obviously Christian, but I feel like it is the kind of movie that anybody could pick up and still enjoy on some level, but it's definitely very Christian. It doesn't tiptoe around the Christian message at all. But I thought it was very, very well done and was a pleasant surprise. All right, so another trigger warning I'm gonna put it right here. Trigger warning of topics related to abortion and loss of children. So if any of those things are triggers for you, please skip to number 2. But October Baby is my number 3 choice. I was originally going to rewatch this movie, but I just am not in the right headspace with it being around Mother's Day. I've been struggling a little bit, and as you know, if you watched my video or listened to my last episode from May where I share my infertility story, it's just not the right, I'm not in the right headspace to be able to rewatch October Baby, but I highly recommend it. It's essentially about the story of a young girl who was almost aborted but survived the abortion, and then is adopted. And she has some medical issues, but she essentially goes on a journey to meet her mother and have a conversation with her birth mother. And so that's kind of all I'm going to tell you, because I don't want to give away too many details, but it's very heart-wrenching. So it is a very real and raw movie, and it's not in your face Christian at all. I'm trying to even remember, like, do they even, I mean, I think her parents talked to her about God and acceptance. It's been so long since I watched it. So I know there's Christian elements to it. I just can't remember how much. But if, like I said, if it's a trigger warning at all for you, the topic of abortion, then I highly recommend that you avoid this one, because it is a very real and difficult story to watch. And I'm pretty sure it's actually based on a true story, but I can't remember exactly. Let me see if I can look it up. Let's see. So October Baby is loosely based on the true story of Gianna Jessen's survival of her birth mother's botched abortion. It says, an only child, Hannah has struggled with physical problems and some feelings of not belonging all her young life. She's never been told about her adoption or the way she was born. And then I think she's told, like, as an adult, because she's having some medical issues, and then that's when she goes on the journey to, like, find her birth mother. So I do highly recommend it. It's definitely, like I said, a trigger warning if that is a difficult subject for you to hear about. All right, so now we're going to move on to my number 2 choice, Christian movie choice. And this one was a surprise, y'all. I literally spent the day watching Jesus Revolution, which I didn't love. I didn't love the movie. And was kind of like feeling a little bit frustrated with my search for more Christian movies. And there was a movie called Surprised by Oxford I have the Hoopla app, the library app, and I rent movies. I get like 10 movie rentals a month through my library app. And so Surprised by Oxford was on my library app and was in my watch list. So I just decided on a whim on a Saturday night earlier that day, this is when I was like fully in the middle of my sprained foot and couldn't move. And was literally like, that was when I had my inspiration to do this video, because I was like, I can sit here and just watch a bunch of movies. So I just on a whim decided to watch Surprised by Oxford, because it had been in my watch list. The preview gave no hint that this was Christian in any way. It made it look like it was just a romance movie about a girl who goes to school in Oxford and falls in love, and the like ups and downs of like this romance. That's what it makes it sound like from the preview. It is not about that at all. There is a romance in it, and it is based on a true story of a real person who is a professor. Let me look it up to make sure I'm telling you her name correctly. I actually like looked her up later. By Oxford. So it is the true story, and it's based on a memoir written by Caroline Weber. She really was a student at Oxford University. She became a professor. Like, definitely go check her out. Really interesting. I'm now kind of want to read her memoir. But the movie was so good. There is a romance woven in. She kind of like, she's not religious at all. I think she's even an atheist at the beginning of the story. But she actually does like a guy that likes her. She ends up finding out that he is a Christian himself. And then she has like a professor, I think, that's a Christian. There's a lot of C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, like mainly C.S. Lewis, but a lot of him is woven into it because I think C.S. Lewis taught at Oxford, but there's like a lot of landmarks and information. She ends up reading Surprised by Joy, a book by C.S. Lewis. And it's just, the movie is really more about her coming to a realization of a belief in God, which eventually in her real life turns into a belief in the Christian God. But yeah, it is not like, the movie is literally called Surprised by Oxford. I was surprised by Oxford. Like, I was not expecting it. It was a pleasant surprise. It was a breath of fresh air after watching Jesus Revolution. And it was beautiful. And it was like exactly the kind of thing that I'm going through right now. Like having lost my faith and questioning my belief in the Christian God. It hit home. It was very like realistic, and how she like, it's very subtle, like how she starts having these like for lack of a better word, inklings. And if you know the reference that I'm making there, let me know in the comment section below of like these stirrings within her of a belief in God and how that develops. It is beautifully done. It is a well-made movie. It is just so beautiful. It is one of my new favorite movies. Just talking about it makes me want to watch it again. Is one of my new favorite movies, and I highly, 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 highly recommend you check out Surprised by Oxford. I think, like, if you have the library app, it's on the library app right now, so you can watch it for free. So well done. Such a beautiful story, and just very real and understandable. And then watching someone who's an unbeliever slowly start seeing proof of the existence of a God. It is a beautiful story, and I highly recommend. And it's also a beautiful love story as well. So if you love romance, it's also a great romance as well. But that's not really the point, and the preview definitely does not tell you that. And I definitely feel like it hits all my points, is that it's not in your face religion. It is not like in your face Christian. It's a well done movie. Anybody could pick up this movie and watch it. Like, anybody can enjoy it. Like, it is just a very well done movie. So highly recommend. And my number one pick of my all time favorite Christian movie ever, which I never hear people talk about, like, I doubt it made very much money, but it's a movie called In Lawfully Yours. I keep wanting to call it Unlawfully Yours, but In Lawfully Yours. It is so beautiful, so funny, so well done. It's essentially this girl is getting a divorce from her husband because he's cheated on her, but his dad passes away at the beginning of this. This all happens at the very, very beginning, so I'm not giving anything away. His dad passes away, and so they go home for the funeral. And so the girl who is divorcing her husband stays back with her mother-in-law to help, because she's supposed to be moving out of her house, to help her pack up. And so she stays there. There is another son-in-law whose wife is dead. So he's a widow, and he's the pastor in that town. And the church that he's a pastor of is dying, like dead and dying. A lot of elderly people there, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's just that's all you have in the church. Your church is dying a slow death. But yeah, so it is a very like dry, empty church. And she just kind of like, and she's not a Christian, the girl in the story. She's not a Christian. And she starts to get her mother-in-law out of the house. She encourages her to go to church. So she starts going to church to be a support for her mother-in-law. And just the comedy and hijinks, of course, ensue. And she goes to church, and she's like listening to the sermons, and she's like, wait a second, I have questions. So she's like literally middle of the church sermon, getting up saying, I'm confused. What does that mean? And then the older people in the church that are like on the church board are like, she's causing havoc, but it's actually proving to be good for the church. The church actually starts, because it's a little more entertaining, people start coming. It is just so, so funny. And there is a love story, but it's really about this girl who doesn't believe in God finding her way. Like, it's just so lighthearted and so joyful and like childlike. She has this like childlike spirit and is coming to Jesus like a child, like the faith of a child. And it is just so beautifully done, so subtly inching its way there. I think I've told you a quote before. I'm trying to remember what video I've said this in, but there's a quote from this movie that I have said to people before, where the pastor, who's a widow, whose wife died, at one point he says that he doesn't pray for himself anymore. He only prays for other people, because when his wife was sick, he prayed for her and God didn't answer his prayer. So he's at this point in his life where he doesn't pray anymore. But when the girl asks him, well, how did you retain your faith in God? he said, well, I realized that I can't be angry at someone that I don't believe in. And I just feel like that definitely hit home whenever I hear people complain about, like, well, why does God let bad things happen? Why did God do this to me? Why did God do that to me? Why did he allow me to become hurt? Why does God not want to protect me? Like, when we ask all those, like, why questions about God, ask yourself, why are you asking yourself, like, would you be asking those questions if you didn't believe in God? Would you be angry if you didn't believe in God? So it kind of helps you remember that even if you're angry, like, you're allowed to be angry. God wants us to talk to him even if we're angry. You're allowed to be angry, but you still believe, and God's still there. That's what I'm always reminding you, that God has not forgotten you. God's still there, and he's okay with you talking to him. Even if you're angry, still talk to him. And this movie really hits that home. It is just so well done. It is funny, it is lighthearted, but deep at the same time. Has a beautiful love story woven in. You've also got the dealing with heartbreak, dealing with grief. It's heartbreaking watching her mother-in-law grieve. But, like, it is just another breath of fresh air. It is just the most beautiful, heartwarming, subtly Christian movie. Anybody can enjoy this. So another movie I highly recommend. Highly recommend. If you don't watch anything else on my list, go check out In Lawfully Yours. It may be on Prime. I'm not sure. It's probably free somewhere because I don't think it was a very popular movie. But it is so, so good. So good. Highly recommend. So that is at the end of my list of movies that I love, that have Christian elements, faith elements to them. Let me know what your favorites are in the comment section below. Let me know if there are any, like, unexpected ones that I missed that I'm not aware of. And let me know if you have any favorites that are my favorites. Just let me know in the comment section below. And let me know if there are any that you don't agree with. Just be respectful and kind with your comments. That's all that I ask. I do reserve the right to delete anything that is hateful or mean-spirited in any way. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this content. We are now doing one of these type of videos a month, and I'm actually listing it as a podcast so that you can just listen to it if you want to. So as far as, like, hot topics, Christian topics, faith stories, those types of things, we're just going to be doing one a month, and we're releasing it on the first Monday of every month. And it is going to be on the podcast playlist. So if you would like to listen to it while you're working out, or while you're cooking dinner, or while you're driving in the car, it is hopefully something that you can easily just listen to and don't need to see me while you're listening to it. But you can if you want to as well. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this content. If you did, definitely give me that thumbs up, that like. And if you would like to follow along with me on my spiritual journey to rediscover my faith in God and our Christian God, we do mostly Bible study related content here, but some videos like this as well. So if you'd like to follow along with me on that journey, then definitely hit that subscribe button as well. I would love to welcome you to come along with me. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video. Okay, guys. This is going to be released on a Monday, so have a wonderful week. It is summer now, so watch some of these movies and enjoy yourself. Okay, guys, don't forget, God has not forgotten you, and we're in this together. I'm here for you. Okay, guys, see you in my next video. Bye.